high desert wind has a sound out here. It is not a howl, not a whisper. I hear it now, a low, constant vibration against the window panes. It is the sound of sand scouring bone, a dry rattle that gets into your teeth. It is the first and last thing you hear. I push my spectacles up the bridge of my nose. The frame is plastic, but the glass itself is cold, a sudden, sharp pressure against my skin. The cold seeps from that single point of contact, a tiny splinter of ice tracing a line over my sinus, making the bones of my face ache. The air in this room smells of old paper and dust, a scent like forgotten time. The old journal feels heavier today. The cardboard cover is warped, and it makes a faint scraping sound as I open it on the clean surface of my desk. October 12th, 1995. The chill came early this year, a sound that woke me this morning, a different kind of silence. The absence of the crickets. I felt my body respond before my mind did, a tensing in my shoulders, a deeper pull of the blankets around me. Then I saw the sun, a hard, polished gold, but there is no warmth in it. The light looks thin. This morning, the water in the throw-in bucket had a thin scrim of ice across its surface, delicate as a dragonfly's wing. The air in the studio smelled of cold stone and damp clay. When I went to start my work, I saw the ice. I had to break it with the heel of my hand. The sound was a sharp crack, followed by 100 tiny tinkling noises as the shards slid into the water below. The sting of it, a bright, shocking cold, shot up my arm to the elbow. It woke me up more than the coffee. The cold went straight to the bone, a deep internal shiver that made my teeth chatter for a second before I clenched my jaw. I love this time of year. The tourists are gone, the gallery owners are too tired to call, and the world shrinks to the size of my studio. It is a good silence, a productive silence. The last of the summer stock is fired and ready for shipment to the gallery in Taos. A dozen dinner sets, 20-odd vases, and 50 of those little pinch pots that sell so well. Reliable work. Agnes would have called it predictable. I can almost hear her voice saying it, that low, smoky sound that always made you feel you were in on a secret, wonderful joke, even if it was at your own expense. My shoulders hunch just thinking of it, a reflexive defense. But Agnes isn't here, and the bills are paid, and there is a deep, quiet satisfaction in that. My partner, Michael, says my pots have a certain serenity. He says it is what people are buying. My serenity. I suppose that is true. The clay centers on the wheel, my hands are steady, the shape rises as it should. There is no struggle. After writing, I set the pen down. I sit perfectly still, listening. The house is never truly silent. I hear the low thrum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, a sound so constant I usually do not notice it. The wind pushes against the west-facing wall, a soft, insistent pressure. My hands are resting on the open pages of the journal, my fingers flat. They feel cool and dry. I can taste the dregs of my afternoon coffee, a bitter, earthy flavor on the back of my tongue. The air is still, carrying the scent of the aging paper and the faintest hint of piñon from the unlit fireplace. For a moment, nothing happens. The world holds its breath, and I hold mine with it. I made beef stew for dinner last night. We ate by the light of the kiva fireplace. The piñon logs crackled and popped, sending little firework bursts of orange sparks up the chimney. I could feel the heat on my face, a pleasant prickling warmth that made my cheeks flush. The air smelled of wood smoke and cumin, and the cold, clean scent of the coming winter that clung to Michael's sweater. Michael read to me from a book of poetry. His voice is a low baritone, a comfortable weight in the quiet room, a steady vibration I could feel in my own chest. I mended a tear in my canvas apron while he read. The needle was stiff, going through the heavy fabric, making a small, tearing sound with each stitch. I used the old silver thimble my grandmother gave me. It sits in a small wooden box with loose buttons and spools of thread. Before I put it on, I held it for a moment. It is tarnished almost black in the deep floral scrollwork, but the tip is still bright, worn smooth from years of use. It felt solid and surprisingly heavy on my finger, a small, useful thing that has outlived the woman who gave it to me. A piece of an old life, still serving the new one. Today is for me. No orders to fill, no deadlines to meet, just the clay and my hands. I'm thinking of a new glaze, something that captures the color of the Gemez Mountains at dusk, that deep, bruised purple that fades to gray. It is a difficult color. It can turn muddy in the kiln if the temperature is not exact. It requires attention. It requires patience. I have plenty of both. The kiln is humming in the corner, a low, constant thrum that I find more comforting than silence. It is a promise of transformation. You put in mud, and if you are careful, if you are skilled, you get back something like stone, something that will last. Agnes never had the patience for glazing. She loved the fire, the risk of the pit firing, the wild, unpredictable patterns the smoke would leave. She wanted magic. I just want to make beautiful, useful things. The mail came. The squeak of the metal mailbox lid, then the soft thud of letters dropping. A postcard from a friend in Tucson, the usual bills, and a thick catalog from a ceramics supplier in Ohio. I will look at it tonight. Maybe they will have a new formulation for a cobalt stain. The wind is picking up now. I can hear it pressing against the old wooden door of the studio. A low, persistent moan. It is a good day to be inside, with the kiln for warmth and a mountain of clay to keep me company. It feels safe. It feels like my own small, perfect world. I am content. Michael says he has never known anyone so at peace with their own life. I believe he is right. Reading this now, my hand trembles. Just a little. A tremor runs from my fingertip to my wrist. I set the pen down. It's the coffee, I tell myself. Too much coffee. The woman who wrote this, the one who was so at peace, I do not recognize her, or perhaps I recognize her too well. I adjust my spectacles, a nervous, jerky movement. The pages are brittle, and the sound they make when I turn them is like dry leaves skittering across pavement. Her serenity feels like a costume. A well-made one, I will grant her that. But a costume, all the same. The first threads were already starting to pull loose. She just could not see them yet. March 7th, 1996. I heard the sound first, a sudden, violent crack, like a dry branch breaking next to my ear. My whole body jumped, my foot slipping off the pedal of the wheel. Then the boom as the studio door, caught by a sudden gust of wind, slammed against the adobe wall. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet of the studio. It sent a shockwave through the floor. A cloud of plaster dust, smelling chalky and dry, puffed into the air. My hands jerked, a spasm I could not control, and the tall vase form I had been coaxing upward for the last 20 minutes collapsed in on itself, a wet, sloppy ruin. The wind that rushed in was cold, smelling of dust and distant rain, a raw, unsettled smell. I took a breath, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard it hurt, and stared at the mess. It is just clay. I can always begin again. but the feeling of violation lingered, the outside world barging in. After the shock of the door slamming, after the ruin of the pot, I spent a few minutes just breathing. The warmth from the kiln at my back was a solid presence. I focused on it, letting the steady heat soak through my shirt, easing the bunched muscles in my shoulders. The air still smelled of dust, but underneath it was the familiar earthy scent of wet clay, the smell of my own work. I scraped the ruined vase off the wheel, the slick, wet sound a comfort. I dropped the lump of clay into the reclaim bucket with a satisfying splash. The world was back to normal. The wind was just wind. The door was just a door. Agnes is back. She called 2 weeks ago from a payphone in Laney. I heard the coins drop first, a metallic clatter, then her voice, exactly the same, rich and conspiratorial, as if we had spoken yesterday and not 6 years ago. My hand tightened on the receiver, my knuckles white. She had just returned from Japan. A 2-year residency in Shigaraki, living with a master potter. She spoke of ancient, dragon-like anagama kilns, of glazes made from the ash of rice husks, of a philosophy of clay that was less about creation and more about discovery. She made it sound like a pilgrimage. She came to the studio the next day. I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel drive first, a slow, grinding sound that made me stop my work. Then the solid final slam of a car door. I wiped my hands on my apron, a hard knot tightening in my stomach, my breath catching in my throat. She strode in without knocking, her silhouette filling the doorway, blocking the light. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. She brought the chill of the outside air in with her. She looked carved from the land itself, her skin brown from the sun, her hair shot through with new threads of gray that looked like silver in the harsh light. She was wearing a rough, indigo-dyed jacket that I had never seen, yet felt I knew intimately. She smelled of sage and something else, something foreign, like incense. She was not just confident, she was complete, hermetically sealed. She ran a hand over the lip of a finished bowl, one of my serene pieces. Her fingers were long and brown, her nails short and clean. She said, "You're still making these." It was not a question. Her tone was flat, but I felt the judgment in it like a physical weight, pressing down on my chest. I thought at first she was just being Agnes, always needing to find a flaw, but that could not be right. The look in her eyes was not the sharp glint of criticism I remembered. It was something else, something softer and more devastating. It was pity. "Maybe she is right," a small voice whispered inside me. "Maybe this work is boring, safe, stagnant." But that felt wrong too. Michael loved these pieces. The gallery sold them. They paid the bills and gave me a deep, quiet peace. They could not be worthless. Her final explanation settled in my mind as she began to look around the rest of the studio. "She has been in Japan, living among ancient traditions and master artisans." Of course, my simple, functional pottery looks predictable to her now. It is not a flaw in my work, just a difference in her perspective, a perspective I could not possibly understand. She looked around the studio at my neat rows of bisqueware, my carefully labeled glaze buckets, my tidy shelves. Her eyes, the color of dark honey, saw everything. She did not need to say the word. Predictable. I heard it anyway. For 2 hours, while the clay on my wheel dried and cracked, she talked. She described the way the Japanese masters viewed imperfections, the wabi-sabi of a crack, the beauty of an asymmetrical form. She said they embraced the accidents, the will of the fire. She spoke of pottery not as a craft, but as a conversation with the earth. Every word she spoke dismantled my small, tidy world. The contentment I had cultivated felt suddenly like cowardice. My serenity felt like stagnation. Michael does not like her. He came into the studio as she was leaving, and the warmth of the room seemed to drop by another 10 degrees. He was polite, of course. Michael is always polite. But his jaw was tight, a muscle jumping under the skin. After she drove away in her dusty, beaten-up truck, he stood in the doorway for a long moment, just watching the dust settle. He said, "Be careful, Susan! That is all." I could not sleep that night. I kept thinking about what she had said. A conversation with the earth, not just making things, but allowing them to become. The next morning, I took a dozen of my best-selling bowls, the ones with the perfect symmetrical forms, and I broke them. I stacked them in the bottom of a metal barrel and built a fire around them with sawdust and mesquite chips. I wanted to see what the smoke would do. I wanted to see what would happen if I let go. The results were interesting, chaotic, blackened and strange. Most of them were just ugly, ruined. But one of them, a shard from the lip of a bowl, had a pattern of crazing I had never seen before. A delicate web of black against the pale stoneware, as if the smoke had been permanently tattooed into the glaze. It was an accident. It was beautiful. I have started experimenting more. Less time at the wheel, more time with the fire. I built a small pit kiln in the backyard, lined with bricks. Michael watches me from the kitchen window. He does not say anything, but I can feel his worry like a change in the weather. The work is different now. It is not serene. It is jagged and raw. I sent a few of the new pieces to the gallery in Taos. The owner called me yesterday. She said they were challenging. She said she was not sure her clients would understand them. She used the word unpleasant. Last night, I found my silver thimble sitting on the edge of the pug mill where I mixed the clay. It was covered in a fine, gritty dust. I do not remember leaving it there. I keep it in the sewing box in the house. My first thought was that I must have left it here myself, a simple lapse of memory. But that cannot be right. I never ever bring it into the studio. It lives in its box. My grandmother's rule was clear: work tools for work, house tools for the house. It is a rule I have never broken. My next thought was that Michael must have moved it, maybe trying to be helpful. But that felt wrong too. He avoids the studio these days, and he would never go into my sewing box without asking. He respects my spaces. It had to be Agnes. She was here yesterday while I was outside tending the pit fire. She has a habit of touching everything as if to absorb its essence through her fingertips. She must have wandered into the house, picked it up from the sewing box, and then, distracted, set it down out here. It is just carelessness, Agnes. It seemed foolish to be unnerved. I cleaned it carefully. The gritty gray clay dust was packed into the delicate scrollwork, dulling the silver. It looked violated. As I wiped it clean with a soft cloth, I noticed a tiny, sharp scratch near the tip, a bright line that gleamed against the duller metal. It was not there before. I put it back in its box. He was right to be worried, was he not? Michael, I see that now, reading this. Be careful, Susan. Such a simple phrase. A warning she could not hear because the sound of Agnes's approval was too loud. It is funny, the things that seem like support at the time, the encouragement to be brave, to take risks. A chill crawls up my arms and my skin pebbles despite the warmth of the room. Looking back, it looks less like support and more like a push. I adjust my spectacles again. The plastic arms feel slick in my hand. August 29, 1996. Agnes and I are going into business together. The words look strange on the page. Solid, irrevocable. We are calling it Terra, just the one word. It was her idea, of course. She said we would be a studio, not a gallery. We would sell our own work on our own terms. No more middlemen, no more catering to the tastes of tourists looking for a nice souvenir. We would create a space for authentic, challenging work, a destination for true collectors. It all happened so fast. After the Dauhaus Gallery rejected my new collection, Agnes took 3 of the best pieces, the ones she called fierce, and drove them to a curator she knew in Santa Fe, a man with a reputation for spotting new talent. He bought them all on the spot. He said my work had a primal energy. He asked to see more. Agnes came back to my studio that evening, her eyes blazing with triumph, a bottle of expensive tequila in her hand. The cork came out with a soft pop. She poured 2 glasses. The sound of the thick liquid glugging into the glass was slow and deliberate. We drank toasts to primal energy, to my newfound success. The tequila was smoky and raw, smelling of earth and fire. It burned all the way down, a searing track of heat in my chest. The warmth spread through my limbs, a dangerous, thrilling heat that made my skin flush and my head spin. She laid out the plan that night. She had found a space, a run-down adobe building just off Canyon Road. It needed work, a lot of work, but the bones were good. She talked about white walls and concrete floors and stark, dramatic lighting. She talked about creating a brand, a mystique. She used words I did not understand, words like synergy and market disruption. It was intoxicating. For years, I had been a solitary craftsperson, content in my little world. Agnes spoke of building an empire. Michael thinks it is a mistake. We had a terrible fight. He called her a parasite. The word hung in the air between us, ugly and sharp. He said she was just using my talent, my new direction, to build something for herself. I have never seen him so angry. His face was pale in the dim light of the living room, his voice tight with a rage I did not know he possessed. The comfortable weight of his presence was gone, replaced by something sharp and brittle. The air grew cold. My stomach twisted into a knot of ice. He asked what would happen when she got bored of this, just like she got bored of everything else. He asked what would happen to me. I told him he was wrong. I told him he did not understand. This is not about Agnes getting bored. This is a partnership. My work, her vision. We complement each other. She sees the big picture, the world beyond my studio door. I just see the clay in front of me. She is the architect. I am the builder. How could he not see the beauty in that? He slept in the guest room last night. The house was cold and silent. I lay awake for hours in our bed, the sheets cool against my skin. I stretched my hand out to his side of the bed, tracing the empty space with my fingertips. I listened. The only sound was the house groaning around me, the low moan of the wind outside. The air tasted of dust and my own stale breath. All the comfortable warmth has gone out of it. We signed the lease yesterday. We pooled our savings. It was almost everything I had. Agnes put in an equal share. Money she said she had saved in Japan. As I signed the papers, I felt a tremor in my hand, a flutter in my stomach, not of fear, of excitement, of pure, unadulterated terror. It felt like stepping off a cliff. Agnes has all but moved into my studio. She is here most days watching me work. She does not touch the clay herself anymore. She says her hands have forgotten how. Instead, she directs, she pushes me. More aggressive, she will say, her voice cutting through the hum of the wheel as she circles a pot I am throwing. Do not be so timid. Break the form. Let it collapse a little. That is where the interest is. My old work is gone. Not. I smashed the last of my serene balls last week. The sound of them shattering was loud and final. They looked weak and cloying to me now. False. The new work is almost exclusively what Agnes calls kintsugi-inspired. We break perfectly good, fired pots, the sharp crack of the hammer on ceramic, a sound I now associate with progress. She shows me how to repair them with lacquer dusted with gold powder. She learned it in Japan. She says it is about honoring the damage, making the break the most beautiful part of the object. My hands are always sticky with lacquer now, the sharp chemical smell clinging to my skin. The gold powder gets into everything. It is a fine, glittering dust. It coats my skin. It shimmers in my hair under the studio lights. Michael says I look like I am turning into one of my own broken pots. He said it quietly, without malice, his voice rough. It was worse than if he had yelled. He has been so quiet lately. He moves through the house like a ghost. The heat has become a memory. A partnership. She really believed that. She wrote it down as if the ink could make it true. My vision, her work. The classic bargain. One person provides the soul, the other provides the cage. It is the oldest story in the art world. I feel a chill creep up my spine, a cold that has nothing to do with the temperature in the room. It starts at the base of my neck, a single thread of ice, and spreads outwards, down my arms, making the skin pebble and the fine hair stand on end. She was so proud of that work. The broken pieces. She did not see that it was her own life she was shattering and gluing back together with gold. She thought it was beautiful. January 11, 1997. The topic is Agnes. Everything is Agnes. The studio, Terra, is a success. A wild, unbelievable success. There was an article in Art Forum. It called our studio a vital new voice in Southwestern ceramics. It called my work a brutalist counterpoint to the sentimental turquoise and coyote aesthetic. The writer spent a paragraph praising Agnes for her curatorial vision, for creating a platform for raw talent to flourish. She has the clipping framed on her desk. My life no longer feels like my own. I wake up, I go to the studio, I make the work Agnes wants me to make. The sounds of the studio, once comforting, have become a torment. The kiln's hum is a nagging whine that drills into my skull. The smell of the clay is no longer earthy and rich. It is the smell of a tomb, of dirt piled on top of me. I break the pots, I mend them with gold. Break and mend, break and mend. The rhythm of it has gotten into my bones. My body aches with it. The demand is insatiable. We sell everything I can make. Agnes has hired an assistant, a young woman who answers the phone and wraps the pottery in expensive-looking black paper. Agnes spends her days with collectors, with critics, with museum people. She is the face of Terra. I am the hands. She has started bringing her own designs to me, sketches on napkins sometimes. A rough shape, a new idea for a surface treatment. She will leave them on my wheel, a silent command. Try this, the drawing says. Make this for me. And I do. The last series, the one the New York Times reviewed, was based entirely on a set of her drawings. The review praised my restless innovation. My innovation! I sat in the studio and read the article, and I felt nothing at all. Just a profound, hollowed-out emptiness. My stomach was a cold, vacant space. The hum of the kiln sounded like a stranger's voice. Michael is gone. He left 3 weeks ago. He packed a single suitcase while I was at the studio. He left a note on the kitchen table. It was very short. I cannot watch this anymore, Susan. I do not know who you are. I hope you find what you are looking for. I have not cried. There does not seem to be anything inside me left to spill out. The house is just a place I sleep now. It is cold, even with the heat on. A dead, still cold that the fireplace cannot touch. A cold that seems to radiate from the walls themselves. I work. That is all I do. I work until my hands are raw and my back is a column of fire. I work until I am too tired to think. 2 nights ago, I heard only the sudden silence. The whir of the wheel had stopped. I woke up hours later, my cheek pressed against a cold, wet lump of clay. The studio was dark around me. The air smelled of stagnant, slimy water. For a moment, I did not know where I was. I did not know who I was. The only light was the red glow from the kiln's digital display. 1,280 degrees Celsius. The fire inside, burning hot. A deep, shuddering gasp racked my body as I pushed myself upright, my muscles stiff and screaming. Agnes came in yesterday excited about a new commission, a hotel in Las Vegas. They want 100 pieces. 100! She was talking about scale, about production, about hiring more potters to execute our designs. She said, "We're going to be a factory, Susie, a brand name." I looked at her hands while she talked. They were clean, manicured, not a speck of clay on them. After she left, the silence in the studio felt enormous. I picked up one of my wire end tools, its wooden handle smooth and familiar in my palm. I began to clean it, wiping away every speck of dried clay with a damp rag. The metal loop at the end gleamed under the single bare bulb above my head. For a full minute, there was only the tool, my hand, and the soft, scraping sound of the cleaning. The warmth from the still hot kiln felt gentle on my back, a comforting presence. Everything seemed manageable, simple. Then my eyes fell on the sketch for the Las Vegas commission, and the weight of the 100 pots crashed down, suffocating the small moment of peace. I am tired. It is a kind of tired that sleep cannot fix. It is a weariness of the soul. Sometimes, in the middle of throwing a pot, my hands will seem to move on their own, the muscle memory deep and sure. They make a familiar, graceful shape from my past, a serene bowl, a simple, elegant vase. And then Agnes's voice will echo in my head. Timid, predictable. My fingers will dig in, a conscious act of violence ruining the form, collapsing the wall. The clay groans as it gives way. I will break it so I can mend it. It is what is expected. It is the only thing I know how to do now. The gold powder is everywhere. A fine, glittering dust that I can never seem to wash away. There is a long gap in the journal after that entry, months of empty pages. The silence is more eloquent than the words. I run my thumb over the blank, slightly yellowed paper. It feels smooth, expectant. I can feel her exhaustion, her emptiness, the engine running on fumes. Then, finally, this. A single, short entry. It is dated almost a year later. December 7th, 1997. The chill came early this year. The police were here. I heard the knock first, a heavy official sound on the studio door that was not a customer's knock. My hands froze on the pot I was mending. They had questions about Agnes, about the designs. They brought some of her inspirations with them. Pages torn from old Japanese art books, photographs of museum pieces. The similarities were exact. My first thought was that it had to be a coincidence. So much of pottery is derivative, a conversation across centuries. But that was not right. The curve of a handle, the placement of a combed design, the precise proportions of a footed bowl. They were not similar, they were identical. A tracing. My mind scrambled for another reason. She was paying homage, not copying, an interpretation. But the collectors, the critics, Art Forum, the New York Times, they were all told this was new. They were told this was my restless innovation. The final thought settled like a block of ice in my stomach. She stole it. She had copied, line for line, form for form. The work the New York Times praised so highly, a direct replica of a piece by a master I had never heard of, a man who had been dead for 50 years. They say it is the biggest scandal the ceramics world has seen in decades. They used the word fraud. Agnes just laughed when they confronted her. That low, smoky laugh, but it sounded thin this time, brittle like shattering glass. It did not reach her eyes. She said all art is theft. They did not find it funny. I have to go to the studio now. I have to break the new pots. I have to mend them with gold. It is the only thing I know how to do. I closed the journal. The sound is a soft final thud. My own hands are clean. There is no clay under the fingernails, no shimmer of gold dust on my skin. I live in a clean, quiet house. My pottery studio, the one I built with my own hands, was sold years ago to pay the lawyers. Tara is gone. Agnes is gone. A name whispered at art world parties, a cautionary tale, a ghost. I found these journals in a box in the attic last week while looking for old photographs. I had not thought of them in years. I have not thought of her in years. That Susan, the one who existed in the 90s. Reading her words feels like watching a stranger who wears my face, who answers to my name. I feel a sort of pity for her, a distant, clinical pity. She was so easily led. So hungry for an identity that she was willing to let someone else hand her one ready-made. I push my spectacles up my nose. The frame is warm. The house is warm. It is not the false heat of a kiln, but the gentle, radiant heat of a home. I am 67 years old. My life is quiet now. Peaceful. I have Michael back. He returned a year after it all fell apart, after I had scraped the last of Agnes from my life. He found me small and quiet and broken, and he patiently, gently helped me put myself back together, not with gold, but with time and with love. The warmth of his hand holding mine, the smell of the rosemary bread he learned to bake, the sound of his quiet breathing in the dark. We rebuilt. I walk through my quiet house. The afternoon sun streams through the windows. On a small table in the entryway, there is a bowl. It is a simple, serene form with a pale celadon glaze. My hands made that. It is my own. There is no trace of Agnes in it, no echo of her ambition, her hunger. It is impossible, I think, how much a life can change, how a person can be broken down to their component parts and then reassembled into someone new, someone stronger, someone whole. I am not the woman in that journal. I am the survivor of that story. I sit at my desk. The sun is on the desk. The light hits the white page. It comes from a new notebook. My hand does not shake now. I pick up a heavy black pen. There is a chill in the air, a memory of desert wind. I look out the window. The postman's truck drives away. He left a small package. It sits on the porch stone. I see the green paper, a customs declaration form. A ceramic supplier from Japan. My fingers find the thimble. It is on my desk. I do not know how it got here. It is not tarnished anymore. It has been polished bright. The old scroll work gleams. The silver looks hungry, clean. I never polish it. It just sits there now, perfect. I slip the thimble onto my finger. It feels solid. It feels correct. My pen touches the clean paper. The words come easily now. The chill came early this year.